Adam Schiff, the top Democrat on the House Intelligence Committee, now speaking.
The majority on the Intelligence Committee made the decision to prematurely shut down the Russia investigation, the only authorized investigation in the House of Representatives into what the Russians did in the last election, what the U.S. government response was, and the issue of any coordination or collusion with the Trump campaign. That was a terrible disservice to the country and the American people, and represented a reneging on the commitment that was made at the outset of the investigation to follow the facts wherever they lead. Instead, what the majority on the Intelligence Committee did was go through the motions of an investigation, call in witnesses but allow them to refuse to answer questions, allow them to invoke non-existent privileges, or simply decline to answer because the witness didn't deem the question relevant or because they would rather not say. Documents that were necessary to obtain to determine whether witnesses were telling the truth would not be subpoenaed. This is no way to run an investigation. It is only a way to go through the motions to give the pretense of trying to find the truth. We are going to do our best to continue our work. There are individuals who want to cooperate with our committee and share information, and will continue to do so. We will be putting together a report that will set out for the country what evidence we have seen to date, what evidence we have seen in terms of the Russian hacking and dumping operation, what evidence we have seen in terms of the Russian social media campaign, their paid media campaign, and yes, the issue of collusion with the Trump campaign. There is significant evidence, much of it in the public domain, on the issue of collusion. The secret meetings with George Papadopoulos, the secret meeting at Trump Tower with the president's son and son-in-law and campaign chairman, the lies and dissembling about that meeting, the promises by Russia that were communicated to the highest levels of the campaign in the preview, in the run-up to that meeting, that this was part of the Russian government's effort to help Donald Trump by providing derogatory information on Hillary Clinton. And of course, the secret conversations that then acting National Security Advisor or incoming National Security Advisor Mike Flynn had with the Russian ambassador to undermine the bipartisan policy of the United States. Conversations that he lied about, that other transition officials were evidently aware of, that the Vice President misrepresented unknowingly to the country. All of that bears on the issue of collusion. There are other facts outside of the public domain. And of course, one of the most important parts of an investigation is putting the pieces together. But still, there is work to be done on that issue and on others, work we have not been allowed to do. Our committee, for example, has not even interviewed George Papadopoulos. But there are witnesses that were involved or knowledgeable about the Trump Tower meeting who have not been brought before our committee. There are text messages we have not sought to subpoena. We are releasing this evening a 22-page status report on the investigation that sets out some of the key witnesses that the majority has been unwilling to bring in, the key documents they have been unwilling to ask for, the witnesses who have come before our committee and stonewalled on key questions, so that the public can see just how incomplete this effort was. Sadly, from a very early point in the investigation, the chairman made the decision that his mission was not to find out what Russia did, not to determine the role of U.S. persons, but rather to endeavor to distract the public, to put the government on trial. That problem persisted throughout our investigation and has led to its premature conclusion last night. But the work is too important to leave undone. In particular, the American people need to know whether the Russians still have something they can hold over the president's head, the President of the United States. So our work is far from done, and we will be submitting to the public a detailed account of what we have learned to date and the work that has to be done, if not by us, then by others, so that the country can be sure that its administration is acting in the best interest of the country and not because of leverage the Russians may have over the President of the United States. And I would invite my colleagues to share their thoughts as well.
Yeah.
Please.
The ranking member has elucidated the damage that will be done to the truth with respect to the Russian interference and possible U.S. person collusion. Sadly, unless we're successful in continuing this investigation, it will be difficult for the country to ever know exactly what happened and therefore to respond with one voice. I want to highlight just very briefly, however, some lasting damage that the premature ending of this investigation will do to Congress and to the separation of powers. As many of you know, because the ranking member has detailed these issues over the course of the investigation, any number of witnesses have asserted historically broad and unprecedented exemptions for testifying to the United States Congress. We saw in the case of several witnesses an expansive and historically unprecedented claim of executive privilege. The idea being that not only were they protected from discussing any conversations they had while they were in the White House, including with third parties that weren't the president, they claimed that transition periods somehow fell under executive privilege. So any conversation with anybody during the transition period were conversations that were not made available to this committee, including by two of the people who are closest to the President of the United States, Hope Hicks and Steve Bannon. Our final witness, of course, asserted what I've come to call the "I don't feel like answering it" exemption when his attorney decided that he, as the witness's attorney, would determine what was relevant and what was not relevant to our investigation. And so I highlight these facts because this is not a partisan issue. The power of the United States Congress in the future to undertake investigations will be forever compromised by the decision of the majority not to push back on these unprecedented claims of privilege against testifying to the United States Congress. I would offer to my friends in the majority that someday, probably not too far from now, they may seek testimony from a Democratic president or a Democratic administration. They have now handed a historically unprecedented exemption, claim of privilege, to anybody that they seek to investigate in the future. And that is something that not only damages the United States Congress, but actually erodes the important separation of powers in the United States.
I think the ranking member did an excellent job of providing you with the backdrop. Let me just suggest a few things. First of all, this is a gross dereliction of duty by the Republican majority to prematurely put out this report. The chair, Mr. Conaway, on Fox News last night referred to it as a wound. And it struck me that that's how the president and the Republicans see this, a wound that they do not want to have to continue to fester, so let's just put a Band-Aid on it and shut it down. This has never been, in my view, an independent investigation. And I think this report, once it becomes public, will suggest to the American people that this is a playbook from the president that has been recalibrated to be a report from the Intelligence Committee. This report was cooked before it was ever baked. And it is a truly desperate attempt, I think, by the majority to undermine what is a very important function. Two other areas that they spend very little time on. The fact that the intelligence community knew in 2015 of the Internet Research Agency. We have not spent a minute talking to the intelligence communities, doing our oversight in terms of why they did not act more deliberatively in dealing with that issue and bring it to our attention sooner. And secondly, the election equipment throughout this country, I think, is in shambles. We have a responsibility to investigate it, to determine to what extent hacking is feasible, and to make sure we have a system that is truly independent and not subject to any kind of malfeasance.
All right, so there you have Jackie Speier, other members of the House Intelligence Committee, the Democrats reacting very angrily to the Republican members of the House Intelligence Committee, their conclusion that there was no collusion between the Trump campaign and the Russians. Adam Schiff, the top Democrat, saying there is significant evidence of collusion both in the public domain as well as facts outside the public domain. A significant difference, Gloria Borger.
Yeah, I think so. Look, from listening to them, it sounds like they think there was collusion between the Republicans on the committee and Donald Trump. I mean, you just heard Congresswoman Speier say that it was cooked. They are now going to release their own 22-page status report, which I assume means a list of things that they have yet to do and questions that they believe still need to be answered. So, these are very upset Democrats who believe that the Republicans have whitewashed their investigation, and they're still going to try and get to the bottom of things. But Wolf, as you know, this is what control of the Congress is about. They don't control the committee. The Republicans control the committee. So all they can do right now is squawk about it.